Good afternoon, scholars. Today we are going to look at a smaller component of what you've been talking about, and this is not other than the strategic directions, strategic objectives, and KPIs. After you have come up with your vision, your mission statement, the next step is to know how do you get there? How do you get to the vision? And that's very, very important. So I want you to be with me. I will not take so much time. I will be able to explain just briefly and then ask you to implement. Yeah, so a strategic direction is basically a course of action or pathway that you need to take in order to achieve the goal of your planned activity or to reach the vision that you had initially set. So there's a path that you need to take in order to quickly realize your vision. So when you set up a vision, you need to set up some very strategic directions to take. It's like when you're going to town. When you're going to town from Unza, there are many directions that you can take. If you want, you can go the Charleston way, and depending on how well you are vested with the directions within Lusaka, you can still find yourself in town, but it will take longer than if you just moved from Unza station all the way along the Great East Road. And also the means that you use. Sometimes you may use a bicycle, you may walk, you may get on a bus. So all those are basically the analog examples that I can give you when you're doing the strategic project planning. You need to come up with a direction that is the most concise and more direct towards the achievement of the vision. So you need to clearly state what the strategic directions are for your project, because they show the way in which you will be moving to get to the destination. And this destination is no other than what? Your vision. And in an example where you want to, let's say, achieve a cholera-free Lusaka urban by 2020 or a COVID-free Lusaka urban by 2020, how should the strategic direction or strategic directions read? Here are some examples. Enhance literacy on sanitation and hygiene, scale up distribution of chlorine, promote practical solid waste management. These are some of the factors that tend to make Lusaka very unpalatable. If you want, you can replace these phrases with COVID-related activities or directions if you are talking about the COVID crisis that we are currently going through today. So I expect that you need to develop your strategic directions within the context of the vision that you have developed, and then develop the direction that you need to take in order for you to reach or to realize that vision. So here on the screen are some of the examples of how to present this: enhance literacy on sanitation and hygiene, scale up distribution of chlorine, promote practical solid waste management. So when you put these directions together, definitely, if they are well followed, you get to a realization of Lusaka urban that is free from cholera outbreaks and so on and so forth by that stipulated period. Let's look at the next section, that is the strategic objective. So under each strategic direction, you need to state the specific or strategic objectives. So objectives are basically those specific things that you want to achieve within the broader frames of the strategic directions. And the universally acceptable model or characteristics of the specific or strategic objectives is basically SMART model. SMART: simple, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound. So when you're presenting your strategic objectives, you need to ask yourselves, are they simple and specific? Are they measurable? Are they attainable? Are they realistic and time bound? So once you see that each objective is living by that model, the SMART model, then you're good enough to move on to the next stage. And I will show you some examples. We are told that this SMART model is basically the most universally used model when you are presenting your strategic objectives in your project. And For the project to enhance literacy on sanitation and hygiene, for example, the SMART objectives can be as follows. These may not be the best examples, but at least they give you a hint on how best you can present your own strategic objectives in a better way than what is on the screen. There is a first one which says to train 2,500 households in cholera prevention by 31st October 2020. So in this strategic objective, you are able to see the specificity and simplicity. You are able to do the measurability. It's measurable because there are 2,500 households to be trained. And then it's realistic. Within the particular period that is available, you are able to actually implement a particular activity. So you need to show all the elements of the SMART model. When I look at your strategic objective, I should be able to see the simplicity and specificity. I should be able to see the measurability. I should be able to see the attainability. I should be able to see realisticness in that objective that you have put. And there must be time associated with each and every strategic objective because they are time bound. So if you don't include the time, you are disqualifying them from being strategic objectives. And under each strategic objective, there should come what we call the key performance indicators. Key performance indicators are basically the signs or the indicators or things that will show that your strategic objectives have been successfully achieved. And according to MULWA 2008, KPIs are simply measures of success for any planned project. So how do we measure that this objective was a success or this project was a success? We are going to look at the KPIs, the key performance indicators, and that you agree with me that many project planners and managers believe that indicators should be what? Should be measurable. But there are certain indicators that cannot be measured. They are qualitative in nature. So we have the quantitative indicators and we have the qualitative KPIs. So those which are measurable should not be overemphasized, but there are those where you can only get the qualitative impression. For example, if you set out a project to renovate, let's say, an environmental learning and research center somewhere, it will be obviously difficult to measure everything, but you can go and inspect the qualitative impression of how it used to be before and how it is now. So if it was dilapidated, you're able to get pictures from the baseline survey that you did. You're able to see that before, when you did the baseline survey, the building used to look like this. Now it looks like this. You see, so qualitatively, still are able to appreciate the what? The indicators of success in that project. You can also observe certain practices which are not measurable, but you can observe them. When you teach people about, let's say, COVID prevention, are you able to see the changes in, for example, their practices? Are they able to put on their face masks? Are they able to keep a distance of some kind and then also wash their hands and maintain general hygiene and sanitation? If you're able to observe those things, that means there is what? A sign that your project has been what? A success. And then here are some examples. Yes, just one example of how you can present your tabular matrix, because you may not need to talk about everything in paragraphs, but you can pack everything together in form of a table. And this is what I strongly recommend what you're seeing on the screen. Put up a tabular matrix for your SDs, your SOs, and KPIs so that you avoid too much text, because in a strategic project planning, we don't encourage a lot of text, too much text. It's kind of time wasting and people will not quickly grasp what you want to communicate. So here is a tabular matrix, and I'm giving an example of one strategic direction to enhance literacy on COVID-19 prevention. So the SD is there, number one, and then the sub of the SD 1.1 means that it is fully under one. SO number one, to train 2,500 students in COVID-19 prevention by 31st October 2020, for example. That is your strategic objective or specific objective. And what are some of the key performance indicators or KPIs? You may want to mention that how many students, because you have mentioned 2,500, and you would say, okay, at least when we train, we should train at least 100% of all students. So how many students have been trained through your program? So the number of students trained is going to determine whether your project is a success or not. So depending on the target that you had set, if you say at least 95 or 99% or even 100% should be trained, it means we are expecting that 2,500 students should have already been trained. And then the other KPIs KPI which I mentioned earlier on is qualitative. You can't measure it, but you can observe it. That is positive change in practice through what? Wearing masks and even washing of hands, keeping a social distance, and other good practices that promote the prevention of COVID-19 spread. So once you put your table like that, then you punch in. It will be very easy for me to see and others to see how you are relating the SDs, the SOs, and the KPIs throughout. So if you have 4, 5 strategic directions, and under each you need to come up with a tabular matrix which follows this format. It may not necessarily be exactly as it is on the screen, but something that reads like this is going to be much appreciated. Avoid too much of writing the long texts and essays in a strategic planning. It's not advisable. And as we end, you may be free to actually ask any question, just right here on the YouTube channel, or you can send me a message. But I will appreciate the questions that will come through the YouTube channel here. And don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to share the channel with others who would love to learn something about how to state your strategic directions, how to state your strategic objectives, and how to state your KPIs in your strategic project planning. And here's a very simple task for you. I know that you're already involved in the continuous development of your project, and I would love you to, from where you have ended, I know that we ended on the mission statement. You need to develop the SDs for your project, the SOs and the KPIs for your ongoing strategic environmental project plan. And I expect that you should submit a cumulative continuous report or progress report at least by the end of this week on Friday. That will be somewhere around 21st of August 2020. I would appreciate to go through your report and see how you're progressing, and see you in the physical meeting on Thursday. And the good Lord bless you. And don't forget to consult and ask me a question where you are not very clear. I'll be very glad to assist you. Thank you very much. Bye bye.